I am an illustrator and a storyteller here in Pittsburgh. I dabble in some like installation work, interactive work, but mostly zines, so small format books that I publish myself. I got my like start in art because my mom is an artist. So like I grew up in my grandpa's print shop, like running around helping to bind things, but also like working on her computer and like having my mom just like show me how to use different materials and draw. So it was just something that I always did. I was always like, I'm like a latchkey kid too. So I was like, I'd come home, I'd like make some ramen noodles, sit in front of the TV and like draw. My grandpa would make me like big sketchbooks from the print shop. So I just draw all the time. And now that's what I do when I come home. Not the ramen noodle part, but to come home, watch TV and draw is the same as when I was like 5 years old. So, I don't know.
Do you still have your sketchbooks from then?
He still makes me them.
That is so awesome.
Yeah, like he'll make like ones like this big, like paper this big with like holes up in there. So it's like really good for like registering like when you're doing screen printing and stuff. So yeah.
So give me a line. Am I saying that correctly?
About my zine?
Yeah, zine.
Okay. So zines have been around for like ever, really, like because they're basically just like small scale self-published booklets. But they sort of got their name zine and became like hip in culture in like probably the 80s and 90s with like DIY punk culture. So it was like all about taking information and knowledge away from like corporatism. So like a lot of people would be like making their own books and like photocopying them about like, you know, what good dumpsters to like get food out of, or like, you know, health practices, like recipe books, like, you know, how to get food stamps, or, you know, it's just a way of democratizing information. And so like the format became really popular because it's like super cheap to just make photocopies of something, or, you know, get it printed at a cheapo printer off a copy machine. So like people start doing comics that way, and really it's just like anything can be a zine now as long as it's like not really a hard cover, like, you know. So I got into it because I was into Riot Girl when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. So like all those like girl punk of the 90s, I was just like, oh, they're so cool, like I'm a rebel girl, yeah. And just started like making my own stuff. And because of my grandpa's print shop and my mom, like they would always just like help me make books when I was a kid anyway. So it's just like I've always been making books. So it just makes sense to do zines because I can just get them printed myself and I did it. You know, I don't have to wait for someone to be like, I'm going to publish your book, here's an advance.
Mm-hmm. So with that said, where do you see your zines going in the future?
Well, I've got my first Kickstarter going to put my 8 zines that represent adventuring princesses so far, my fairy tale. Mm-hmm. Like, since I've reached a milestone with the zines and that storyline, I'm actually going to get them published as like a bound softcover book. So this will be my first like non-zine book that is collecting other zines. But I mean, hopefully. Yeah.
Tell us about Adventure Princesses. So
Adventuring Princesses started because I really like fairy tales, and I loved the Disney princesses when I was growing up.
Who doesn't?
I mean, like Sleeping Beauty is my favorite of all time, forever and ever. Like, so beautiful. Like, it's like, but it's also so fucked up. The story is so like weird. Like the original fairy tale, she like goes to sleep, the prince finds her and like impregnates her 3 times over. She has the kids while she's asleep still, and then she finally wakes up, and then her husband takes her to his castle, and his mom's an ogre, and she tries to eat her and all their kids, and then toss Sleeping Beauty into a pit of snakes, but then the prince comes home and is like, oh, Mom, you suck, and pushes her in the pit of snakes. It's crazy. But that's what real fairy tales were like. And I just thought it would be cool to, like, take a traditional fairy tale, like, and sort of give it a fractured fairy tale. So I wanted to give agency to the princess more, because she just basically is a victim of destiny, and then she's asleep, you know, and all these things happen around her, and she has completely no stake in her own story. So I was like, I want to flip that around, and I don't want some evil queen to, like, curse her, because why does she even care, you know? So I was like, I'm going to make the Sleeping Beauty all asleep because she's bored. And I came up to this point, I was like, well, who's going to wake her up? And I didn't know how to wake her up until I was, like, out with my friend Steph, and we were at the library, and we were looking at books, and I opened to a dedication page and it says, to Stephanie, who woke the sleeper. And I was like, oh my god, she needs to have, like, a platonic female character wake her up. And so that's where, that was where Alva came in, the other princess. So there's Dara and Alva, and in the actual story, they're first cousins, and Dara curses herself to sleep because she's, like, super powerful, and just like, I'm bored, I want to go on my adventures, I'd rather just sleep this until someone wakes me up and I can start my life. And so meanwhile, poor Alva is having a horrible time in her world, and is thinking how she wants to escape and just rid herself of this life. Because she's not supposed to be a girl, basically, you know.
Yeah.
The king doesn't want daughters, and so she's hidden as a girl for her, like, childhood. But then, you know, puberty hits, it's hard to hide.
Definitely.
So she ends up, like, having to escape and find Dara. And so there's lots of magic, and I, like, am firmly committed to there being absolutely no romance.
I love it.
At least, like, not as, like,
Yeah.
you know, direct, like not being, like, a direct plot line. It's like, this person's goal is all because of, like, romance.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I want the princesses to be, like, doing all this because it's, like, the thing they need to do to save the kingdom, to be good rulers,
Yeah.
not just, like, to find a prince and get pregnant.
And get married.
Yeah, no. Like, my princesses have, like, way bigger plans.
They have a life to live.
Yeah.
And a purpose.
Right.
Their own purpose.
I mean, it's like, like, I nannied for a while, and I would watch the Disney Channel with them,
Yeah.
and it was like, because they always talk about, like, the princess problem, where it, like, is teaching these girls, like, you know, like, one true love, fairy tale ending, blah, blah, blah. But the movies are still like that. It's like...
So do you see that becoming a movie? I think it would be.
Adventuring Princesses?
Yeah.
Well,
Or an animated series? That would be dope.
I like to refer to Adventuring Princesses as my retirement plan. Like, if I just work hard enough, people will notice, and then they'll want a lot of it, and then I will be able to, like, just
Draw.
make art and, like, give them what they want. Like, look at J.K. Rowling. Like, come on.
Yeah.
She was sitting in bars writing notes. Like, I feel like I'm in a much better place than that. But no, I actually had some friends recently be like, oh, your art style would lend itself really well to animation. Like,
It would.
This looks like a video game, like, especially since I've been doing a lot of backgrounds now.
Yeah.
So I'm like, good. I'm glad that other people are thinking, wow, this could be translated into other media.
Especially with all the different avenues you can go with media these days, which is really cool and dope.
I would totally be down for, like, an animated show, but heart of hearts, I would love if it was live action. But I think it would inherently, when you do live action, and then you have to, like, find actors to fill the characters, and then blah, 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 kind of, like, would take away, I think. Because I've tried to, like, keep everything black and white so that the audience sort of colors it.
Yeah.
Because I I don't want my princesses to necessarily be seen as especially beautiful or ugly either. So like if it was animated, it could stay very simply in the style of how I drew it, and not just like get some like beautiful chick as like one of the princesses. Because like it sucks when you're like not a cute girl and like all these like people that like get the happy ever after lifestyle are like gorgeous. That like is not true, and it's like makes you feel bad.
Yeah.
So
most people are pretty average.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things these beautiful people do to look like that.
Right. Right. So that's one thing I don't want there to be romance. I'm purposely not going to refer to my princesses as being beautiful ever. I'm not going to have that be a plot line like either, because I'm trying to be like really smart about giving the world a more productive fairy tale that will help, especially young women, young girls, like be able to be proud of themselves and feel like they can do something and like they have magic, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
To like do what they want with their lives. But on the same coin, like I hope guys like my story too. And a lot of guys have like the story.
That's dope.
And so like for young men, give them examples of women that are, you know, positive. Like girls can do the same thing that guys do. It's okay.
I dig it.
Because I read this like statistic recently that like, so like if you have a story and you have a male protagonist, it is like twice as likely that that book will be purchased than if you have a female protagonist, especially amongst children's books.
Oh, really?
Because young boys are still being socialized not to want to read storylines featuring females. Whereas young girls identify with both male and female characters. So I hate that. And I think it's partially because a lot of times if there's a female character, the storyline is very like frilly, you know, it's very like pretty, like, and it's like, yeah, I can imagine sometimes a lot of boys who are raised to be more rough wouldn't like that anyway. Whereas like boys' stories are like, oh, they're going on adventures, they're doing all this great stuff, like, of course, who wouldn't want to read about that, you know?
True.
So I'm trying to make a not so like frilly girls that guys will be like, these are cool. Like, this is a cool story. Like, they're like battling, they're traveling in like ethereal realms, like to land of the dead. Oh, you know?
I love it.
As you can tell, I think about it really seriously.
I mean, but I think when it's something that you love and that, as you said, your retirement plan, but it's not just a retirement planning, it's a aspect of what you want to, you know, what you want to do with your life, and that's very important. And it's your creative expression and your beliefs, and so
It's like,
you have to take it seriously.
I see like a lot of like issues in the world, and you know, I don't necessarily or don't feel comfortable speaking on every single one of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like in this project, this is my way of trying to help create a world that I think is more accepting, especially like on gender issues.
Yeah.
So like, you know, I'm a feminist, I believe it, so this work that I create, I want to reflect that really appropriately and not just be like,
Yeah.
some trash bag or something.
Who likes those? No.
I will admit that I've definitely bought one and taken myself to a diner with some french fries and a milkshake and just flip through the pages.
Hey, I understand. I get it. So have you, do you currently do any work in the community? Or working with children?
I work at Arsenal Middle School 1 day a week doing art after school. So I have like, you know, about 10 kids that I see every week and we work on art.
Cool.
And it's great. I love it. and a lot of our art is like socially themed. But I have like one student who I'm very proud of. I mentored him for his Kappa application, and he got in.
Oh, wow.
But he's a comic book artist.
Nice.
And he's like 13, and he's got like so much written and like characters like developed. I'm just like, this is awesome. You need to keep going with this. Like, don't be afraid. And so like I'm helping him get his first book published.
That is so amazing.
But like to tie that back to my princesses in a way, he was like, I was giving him some like pointers on like drawing figures, and I was like, so you want the truth? I was like, you want to know why some of your figures look awkward? That girl's boobs are up at her collarbone. And that doesn't work that way. Like, I was like, I'm sorry, dude, but like, if you can learn how to draw it like realistically, then you can learn how to like take steps to make it more stylized. But nobody's boobs are at their collarbone, so that's going to be the first thing we change. And he was like, oh yeah, you're right, Miss Maggie. Yeah, okay. Like, thank you for being honest.
That's so cool.
I can just change one 13-year-old comic book nerd
at a time. At a time.
For the future.
That's all it takes. Just what?
His comics are like a very gendered space. Yeah. Well, like if you like a lot of like just if you look at like the difference between a male superhero's costume and a female superhero's costume,
very different.
It's basically like the female has a third of the fabric on.
Yes.
And it's really impractical, and like there's been a lot going on the past few years that's really like tried to like hit the comic book world. No, we need to be more safe for girls.
Yeah.
And, like women are comic book readers. Like you don't gain more readers. You're just alienating more women who are potential customers. Like really doesn't make any sense. Like why these big comic book companies are still perpetuating like certain drawing styles.
Yeah.
Or not having women writers or women artists. Like
so do you have a favorite comic book artist and comic book character?
So, well, my favorite comic book, like, universe has always been Batman.
I understand.
It's always been Batman, but I've always loved Catwoman. Like,
She's so awesome.
she's, like, the coolest. And I love her because, like, she, despite being, like, drawn all broke back and, like, hypersexualized, she's, like, she was, depending on the storyline, oh god, comic nerd, rebooting, blah, blah, blah. Like, in a lot of stories, she was, like, an ex-prostitute from a bad part of poor town that was like, you know what, screw this, I'm gonna rob from the rich, basically, to help support herself and, like, the people she was around. And, becomes, like, sort of Batman's equal. But she's, like, always, like, a lot of times she's, like, portrayed as a villain, but she's really neutral. She's just, like, she's just chaos. Like, she only plays to her own rules. Like, Batman is totally in love with her and he can't do anything about it. And she's just, like, whatever. But, like, I just like that, and in later storylines, she ends up, like, what she steals, she, like, literally gives back to the people in her neighborhood, and she protects her neighborhood. So I feel like that's, like, a really, like, a beautiful character. Like, she doesn't let anybody control her. She's her own person. She's highly skilled, as, like, an acrobat, basically. But I just love her. And I can't help it. I just love when the idea that she can just bring Batman to his knees, Like, he's so weak in that regard. Like, he could be the best detective, but she's just like, you can't, you're a stupid boy. You're just like,
I don't have time for you.
Like, well, I'm gonna just go run away. It doesn't even matter. But, so she's one of my favorite. I'd have to say, one of my favorite comic book artists like in more traditional comic, like superhero stuff, is Alex Ross. He does like painting stuff, beautiful. But I also really like the Hernandez brothers. They do like some more indie comic stuff, and they actually like are known for writing really good female characters, which I also really love. Like in Love and Rockets, and a lot of their just female characters are usually just like more like on par with the guys.
Yeah.
And they sort of deal with the fact that they're girls and, you know, live in a man's world. But it's so they're good.
Nice.
I mean, they definitely draw chicks like crazy, buxom and skinny, but they at least like make them have like more layers of personality.
Can't win them all, I guess. That's why your
Right,
zine is here.
Right. It's just, you know, it's tough.
It is.
I think a lot of people, there's like a ton of really awesome like female comic book artists that are coming out though, like especially like on the indie scene, and they're just like drawing women in every single way and being really honest about chicks and what chicks like. So I feel cool to be part of that. So hopefully like people start paying attention more to like what women have to say, especially in comics, because it's tough.
I can imagine.
It's a boys' club.
Yeah.
You know? When like the leader of the pack is Superman, you know, it's hard.
Yeah. So any closing remarks for us?
Oh wow.
Put you on the spot. I'm sorry.
Stay tuned. I guess there's lots of awesome stuff coming out. I'm gonna have Volume 0, regardless of the Kickstarter or not. It's gonna be available for purchase at the Pittsburgh Indie Comics Expo on March 22nd.
Well, thank you, Maggie.